everyone, it's Jennifer from Fiberflux. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here because today we're going to learn how to make these easy star stitch earwarmers. These are so pretty and really fast to make. I made these with some self-striping yarn, so it's really fun to kind of show off the stitches, but we're going to talk more about the different yarns you can use. Now, this is just a simple rectangle of some star stitch, and I seamed this in a special way to make this pretty twist at the top. So these are perfect for when it's cold outside, and if you like to wear a bun or a ponytail in your hair, you can kind of wear this very easily around an existing hairstyle. So I'm going to put this on and just kind of show you. You just kind of slip it on. You can slip it over top of your hair too if you wear it down like I'm wearing it, and put the knot at the top, and it looks really cute, really simple and easy to wear. So we're going to go through the full pattern step by step from start to finish, from the supplies to stitching up this star stitch if you're not familiar, and then we're going to seam the front of this to add this beautiful little twist. Now you can get the full written pattern over at the blog, the link is below. You can also get the ad-free pattern PDF both in my Etsy shop and my Ravelry shop as well, so you can find those there. And we're going to go through this step by step. Now before we get started, be sure to hit that subscribe button to get all the latest Fiberflux video updates. I share full pattern tutorial videos like this. I share stitch tutorials. I share vlog roundups, and sometimes we just chat and hang out. I also do crochet along. So if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and get all the latest updates. So let's jump in and learn how to make these easy star stitch earwarmers. Okay, so let's take a closer look at these beautiful earwarmers. Now, like I said before, we're doing the star stitch. We're going to be making a long rectangle, working our way up, and then seaming them. So you can see how the yarn kind of shows off the stitches. I'm using this like self-striping yarn. There's a little metallic through it. It's really fun. But you can really use any yarn you like. You can do this in a solid color as well. So the finished pieces that I have here are each about 4.5 inches tall, and each of these have a circumference of about 18 inches. I just wanted to point out too, as a side note, these are pretty stretchy, so you can kind of stretch them on, but you can also change the circumference. I'm going to show you later on in the video by adjusting our starting chain, okay? You can also change the height of these by working more rows of the pattern as well. If you want it a little bit narrower or a little bit wider, you can easily change that as well. And we'll talk about that more in the video. So let's jump in, talk about supplies, and then get right to the crochet. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, also called a yarn needle. A tape measure is super helpful, not necessary, but if you want to measure the circumference of your head, if you want to customize a little bit, this would be helpful as well. We're going to be using a 6mm J crochet hook for this project. And then let's talk about this yarn. I have this yarn here called Mocktail from Hobie. It's kind of like a tonal yarn, and then it has some silver kind of parts through it that just make it really fun and pretty. It's very cute. This is 98 yards per ball. I'm going to be using 1 ball per earwarmer. I got 2 colors of this because I wanted to show you what it looked like in each color. So I wanted to make 2 to show you. But each ball of this is 98 yards or 90 meters. And if you need to substitute yarn, just use a medium 4 on the yarn weight scale, 98 yards of that, and one that recommends the 6mm J crochet hook, and you'll be just fine. Now, if you're interested in these colors, this is colorway number 4. That's called Lingonberry Spritz. And then this is colorway number 6, and that is called Blueberry Mule. So fun names because it's mocktail. They have like cute names. But anyway, 1 ball of this per earwarmer. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I stitched one up in the pink ball of yarn, and then we're going to make one together with this beautiful blue, okay? So as you can see, this was once a long rectangle strip. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way up and just work some repeats. It's not very long of a project at all, okay? And then finally, I'll show you how to seam it together. Now I did a chain 73. You can do any odd number you like. The chain 73 fit comfortably around my head. You want it to be nice and fitted, but not tight. And you don't want it to be too loose either because it will kind of slide around when you wear it, okay? So I felt like the chain 73 worked for me personally, but you can change it as long as it's any odd number of your starting chain. What we're going to do to start is put a slip knot on our hook. So leave a little tail, wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop, bring the yarn behind that loop, reach in with your hook, bring up a loop, and tighten. And again, 73 chains is what we need for this, okay? So to make a chain, wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through the loop. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 70, 71, 72, and 73. So here is our starting chain. Again, before you move on, wrap it around your head. Make sure it fits comfortably, not too tight, not too loose, okay? Okay, now we're going to begin with row 1. So we're going to do what's called a single crochet 5 together from the second chain from the hook. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do that, but I just wanted to kind of make it match the written pattern as we go through this in case you're following along on the written pattern, okay? So to do this, what we're going to do is insert the hook in the second chain from the hook, and we're going to bring up a loop. Okay, so this loop here does not count. We're going to go 1 and 2 chains, and we're going to insert the hook into that chain, and we're going to wrap the yarn around the hook, and we're going to bring up a loop. Okay, so now you'll have 2 loops on your hook. We're going to repeat this across until we have a total of 6 loops on our hook. Okay, so go into the next chain, bring up a loop. 3 loops are on the hook. Go into the next chain, bring up a loop. 4 loops are on the hook. Go into the next chain, bring up a loop. 5 loops are on the hook. Go into the next chain, bring up a loop. 6 loops are now on our hook. Okay, then what we'll do is we're going to wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through all 6 loops. Okay, now we have almost our first star, but we're going to close it by working a chain 1. And now we have 1 star complete. Okay, now we're going to sort of build off this star for the rest of our row. Okay, so when we look at our star, you can see it sort of has these legs kind of coming off of it, and there's a little circle. You can see the little, you can kind of see some light coming through it. That's the eye of our star, this little hole right there. Okay, so we're going to go into the eye of the star now. We're going to insert our hook and bring up a loop. Okay, you'll have 2 loops on the hook. Now, if we look at our legs here, these 2 at the end, the very last 2 here, go in between those, bring up a loop, then you'll pull up a loop from the last chain worked. And just so you can find this easily for future reference, it's a little bit more open. See how that looks a little bit more open here than some of these other chains? You'll go in there and bring up a loop. 4 loops are on the hook. Go into the next chain, bring up a loop. 5 loops are on the hook. Go into the next chain, bring up a loop. 6 loops are on the hook. Okay? Wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through all 6 loops, and then chain 1 to close that star. Okay? So now you can see we have 2 little stars side by side. Okay? Now we're just going to repeat what we just did all the way across for our chains. Okay? We'll go nice and slow for the first couple of ones, and then we'll sort of pick up speed. Okay? So go into the eye of the star you just made, bring up a loop. Then you're going to go into these 2 legs, or even spikes, sometimes people call them. So in between those 2 spikes here, bring up a loop. 3 loops are on the hook. Go in that last chain work. Remember, it's a little bit open looking than the other ones. Bring up a loop. 4 loops are on the hook. Bring up a loop in the next chain. 5 loops are on the hook. Next chain, bring up a loop. 6 loops are on the hook. Wrap your yarn around hook, bring it through all 6 loops, and chain 1. Okay? Next star is complete. All right, moving right along, we're going to go back into the eye of this last star worked, bring up a loop. Go in between these last 2 spikes or legs, bring up a loop. Go in that last chain worked, bring up a loop. Go into the next chain and bring up a loop, and the next chain and bring up a loop. You'll have 6 loops on the hook. Wrap your yarn around hook, bring it through all 6 loops, and chain 1. Okay? It's looking very pretty. Okay, let's pick up a little bit of speed. We're going to go into the eye and bring up a loop, go in between the last 2 spikes and bring up a loop, go in that last chain worked, bring up a loop, go in the next chain, bring up a loop, next chain, bring up a loop, and then look back and you'll have 6 loops on your hook. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through all 6 loops and chain 1. Now go back into the eye of the star you just worked, bring up a loop. Go in between those last 2 spikes of the star, bring up a loop. Go into the last chain worked, bring up a loop. Go into the next chain and bring up a loop, and the next chain and bring up a loop. 6 loops are on the hook, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through all 6 loops and chain 1. Go into the eye of the star you just worked, bring up a loop. Go in between those last 2 spikes, bring up a loop. Go in that last chain work, remember it's a little open looking, bring up a loop. Next chain, bring up a loop. Next chain, bring up a loop. You'll have 6 loops on the hook, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through all 6 loops and chain 1. Now we're going to go into the eye of the star that we just worked, bring up a loop. Go in between those last 2 spikes, bring up a loop. Go into the last chain worked and bring up a loop. Go into the next chain, bring up a loop. And the next chain, bring up a loop. 6 loops are on the hook, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through all 6 loops, chain 1. Go into the eye of the last star you just worked, bring up a loop. Go in between those last 2 spikes of the star, bring up a loop. Go into the last chain worked and bring up a loop. Go into the next chain, bring up a loop. And the next chain and bring up a loop. 6 loops are on the hook, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through all 6 loops and chain 1. Okay? So we have quite a nice little row of stars going. And just as a side note, my yarn has turned glittery and it makes the stars extra fun. All right, go into the eye, bring up a loop. Go into the last 2 spikes of the star, bring up a loop. Go into the last chain worked and bring up a loop. Go into the last chain worked and bring up a loop. Go into the next chain, bring up a loop. And the next chain and bring up a loop. 6 loops are on the hook. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through all 6 loops. Okay, so we've done a bunch of these together. Let's depart, finish up the row here, and you're going to go almost all the way to the end. And then once we get almost all the way to the end, we will rejoin. I'm going to show you how to finish row 1, and we're going to move on to row 2. So keep going, doing the same thing that we've been doing all the way across. And once we get towards the end of the row, we'll rejoin. Okay, we're coming up to the end of the row here. Let's work 1 more star. Go into the eye of the last star worked, bring up a loop. Go in between those last 2 spikes or legs, bring up a loop. 3 loops are on the hook. Go in that last chain worked, bring up a loop. 4 loops are on the hook. Bring up a loop in from the next chain, 5 loops. Bring up a loop from the next chain and 6 loops. So we have 6 loops on our hook. Wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through all 6 loops and chain 1. Now, there'll be 1 chain left. What we're going to do is work a half double crochet into that last chain. So to make a half double crochet, wrap the yarn around the hook, insert it into that last chain and bring up a loop. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through all 3 loops. And I give it a little tug just to finish. So now we have a beautiful row here that we've started. It's full of texture and our tonal yarn is kind of playing out. It looks very pretty. Okay, we're going to move on to row 2. For row 2, what we'll do is chain 2 and we're going to turn our work. So we're going to do 2 half double crochets into that first eye of the star, okay? Wrap the yarn around the hook, insert the hook into that star's eye, bring up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on the hook. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through all 3 loops, okay? Work another half double crochet into that eye. And then we're gonna just do this all the way across. So let's do a few together. Go into the next eye, and if you need to flip it over and peek, that's fine. You can kind of mark it with your finger. Work 2 half double crochets into the next eye. Just like that. Locate the next eye, it's right there. I can kind of mark it with my finger. And work 2 half double crochets into that eye as well. And you'll just do this all the way across, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. And then once we get to the end of row 2, we'll rejoin and we'll take a look at what we've done, finish off the row and move on to row 3, okay? Again, 2 half double crochets in each of your star's eyes all the way across, okay? Okay, just coming up to the end of the row, here is our last eye for our little stars, and we're going to work just 2 half double crochets into that like we've been doing all the way across. All right, now to finish up the row, we're going to work a half double crochet in the last stitch of the row. So you can see here, let me move my hook a little. You can see here our star comes around and then there's like a loop at the end, okay? That's our last stitch of the row, just in case you're looking for it. So work a half double crochet right into that stitch, okay? And row 2 is complete. Moving on to row 3, what we're going to do is chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to turn our work. Then we're going to insert the hook into the second chain from the hook and bring up a loop, okay? So this loop doesn't count. We're going to go 1, 2, insert the hook into that chain, bring up a loop. 2 loops are on the hook. Insert the hook into the next chain, bring up a loop. 3 loops are on the hook. Okay, if you notice, I sort of had things turned to see it easier. Then we're going to locate the first stitch. You can kind of see it at the bottom here. You can see it there. We're going to insert the hook into that first stitch of the row and bring up a loop. You'll have 4 loops on the hook. Insert the hook into the next stitch, bring up a loop. 5 loops are on the hook. Insert the hook into the next stitch and bring up a loop. 6 loops are on the hook. Okay, so now we're back to making stars. Okay, so wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through all 6 loops and chain 1. Now we're ready to kind of keep working across. We established that first star, okay? So then what you'll do is just the same thing we did 2 rows back. So go back into the eye of the star you just worked, bring up a loop. Go in between the last 2 spikes of the same star, bring up a loop. 3 loops are on the hook. Go into that last, now it's not a chain, it's a stitch this time. So go into that last stitch worked and bring up a loop. Now again, let me just pull that out. It will look, see how it looks a little bit bigger than the other ones? See how it's more exaggerated? So I'm going to that last stitch and bring up a loop. 4 loops are on the hook. Next stitch, bring up a loop. 5 loops are on the hook. Next stitch, bring up a loop. 6 loops are on the hook. Wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through all 6 loops and chain 1 to close the star, okay? Now you can see here our stars. I know this yarn up here is a little bit dark, but you can see here our eyes are starting to line up together, okay? You can see on our finished piece how that's also the same case. Our eyes sort of line up, okay? All right, let's come back here. Let's do one more nice and slow, and then we'll kind of depart on our own. Go into that eye of the last star worked, bring up a loop. Go in between the last 2 spikes of the star, the same star, bring up a loop. 3 loops are on the hook. Go in that last stitch worked, bring up a loop. Remember, it's a little bit bigger than the other ones. 4 loops are on the hook. Next stitch, bring up a loop. 5 loops are on the hook. Next stitch, bring up a loop. 6 loops are on the hook. Okay, now wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through all 6 loops and chain 1. Okay, now we're going to keep repeating that all the way across until we get to the end. Once we're towards the end of row 3, we'll rejoin and I'll show you how to finish off that row as well. All right, coming up to the end, we're going to make our last star. Go in the eye, bring up a loop, go in between those last 2 spikes, bring up a loop. Last stitch worked, bring up a loop. Next stitch, bring up a loop. Next stitch, bring up a loop. 6 loops are on the hook. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through all 6 loops and chain 1. And then to finish the row, go in that last stitch of the row and we're going to work a half double crochet to finish the row. Same thing we did before, okay? All right, so row 3 is complete. Now you'll have a beautiful strip and you are on your way. With star stitch though, you'll want to end on row 2 so that it completes the top of your star, okay? So it gives it more of a finished look, okay? So keep repeating rows 2 and 3, 2 and 3 over and over until it's as wide as you would like it to be, ending on row 2, okay? Let's keep going, and when we rejoin, our blue version will be as tall as this pink version here, and I'll show you then how to finish it and add this beautiful twist in your work as well. Okay, just coming up to the end of the row, working this last stitch, and we have about 4.5 inches tall here, It's the same height as the other, and we've worked the same number of rows. You can see that, how it looks with the two different colors. And now we're ready to assemble it. So as a side note, this is still the same size hook. I just couldn't find the one from the beginning of the video, so I'm using a different hook, but it's the same size. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to cut the yarn, leaving a tail about 12 inches or so, okay? We're going to use this tail to seam our work. So wrap the yarn to fasten off your project, wrap the yarn around the hook and just pull it through that loop, okay? And then just tighten it down. Now, there's two things you can do at this point. If you want to do the twist in your ear warmer, I'm going to show you how to do that. However, if you want just a plain kind of band, you can sew it just straight up like this, okay? Here's the two different looks. All right, I'm going to show you how to do the twist though. So what you want to do, you'll have two tails, one where you began and one where you ended. So go ahead and weave in one of those tails because you're not going to need one of them, okay? I would choose, you can use either one. I would choose the one that's longer, okay? So we're going to weave in, we're going to go in one direction here with our tail, straighten it out, and then just bring it back in the other direction, okay? So the next thing we're going to do, like I said, is put the little, seam it up, but put that nice little twist in the work, okay? So what we want to do is we are going to flip this so it's inside out, okay? So what you'll do is you'll take both ends with this is the right side, the side with the stars, okay? You want that on the outside. So flip it over so that when you do this, it's turned in, okay? Now, take your ends and you're gonna fold this side and you're gonna fold this side. You're gonna make like two C shapes, see that? And then you're gonna interlock them so that they kind of are doing this, okay? So go ahead and interlock them and make sure that there's an equal width across all four layers. You're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 layers here, making a little sandwich. Okay? Then once you do that, grab your needle and you're going to take that tail that we just did and you're just going to thread your needle here. You can set that aside for a second. I tried to do it with one hand, couldn't quite do it. Okay, now get your layers back together. Line everything up nice and neat. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your tail and you're going to seam this and go nice and slow and carefully because you want to incorporate all 4 layers, okay? And we're going to do a whip stitch, which is just a spiral through your work, okay? So we're going to kind of bring it over and then go through all 4 layers. Kind of wiggle it through, making sure you're going through all 4 layers. And then I like to pull it pretty snug, okay? Go through all 4 layers and pull it. All 4 layers and pull. All 4 layers and pull. Just like that, okay? Now I'll just take that all the way to the end, making sure you're incorporating all those layers, okay? All right, now, when you get to the end, pull it almost all the way through, leaving a little loop here, and then send your needle through that loop a couple of times, just like that, and then we're gonna fasten off, okay? So now, what we wanna do is you're going to take, while it's still threaded on the needle, take one of these layers and we're just going to, in these back loops here, because this is the inside of our ear warmer, you're just going to weave that tail in, okay? So just go in one direction, come back in the other direction, just like that, and then just give it a little snip to fasten off. Now, it looks kind of lumpy and not quite what we want. So we're going to turn it right side out and it's going to reveal our beautiful twist. So easy and clever. and just takes a second, but it looks a lot more complicated than it really is. So our ear warmers are complete. They look beautiful. They're easy to make and very quick to make too. So that is how you crochet an easy star stitch ear warmer. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiberflux video updates. Thanks again.